Hi everyone, on this video we're going to be covering the intent part of the class. So for this one, the first thing that you will need to do is go into Canvas and download the intent template example. This will give you this code. All that you will find here is basically the same code that we have for the event handling and spinner tutorials that we've gone through before. So on this one, what we're going to be working on is on adding an extra activity and then transition between these activities using the intent. So the code itself should be very familiar to you. There's been no changes to that. But the first thing we're going to do is create a second activity. So in this case, we go to new activity. We're going to create an empty activity. Let's call it pets list activity. Make sure this box is not ticked because you can only have one launcher activity in the app. In this case, you already have main activity as the launcher activity. So just don't tick that. This is going to be the layout. Click finish and then we're done. So you will find both the Java code and the new layout here. So for this second activity, what we're going to be using is the code that we have from our list view walkthrough. So if you go to the list view example, just copy the code from the layout and from the activity that you had at the very end. We're gonna have to make a couple changes to make it work. So I've already made those changes, so I'm just gonna put it here. But the first change that you want to make sure that you do is change the package name. If you copy from the other project, it will be list view example, so just make sure the package name changes. Same thing for this one, it's going to be different. Make sure that when you go to the application context on the onCreate over here, this one is this layout activity pets list and not main activity. Right now we have two errors with the layout, and that's just because we don't have those particular views on this empty activity. So we're gonna go back to our other project, just copy everything, paste it here. Two things that you will need to change: make sure that the context is not main activity but pet list activity, and that's it. Everything else remains the same there. And over here I've just changed this one to be pet care label so it doesn't conflict with an string resource that I had for the other activity. I want to keep those separate. And the second change here is that we're going to be calling this one header text rather than text view. So change the ID both on the widget itself and on the constraint for the list view. Once you have that, you can compile the app, and all you will see is effectively a logging application. Even though we already have two activities already compiling fine without any errors, you will not be able to get there yet. So that's what we're going to be working on right now. So we want to add the functionality that when we click submit, will open this activity. So for this one, we no longer need to touch the XML code. So let me just close those. And then let's go to the main activity. So here we go to where we want to trigger the event. So it's in the submit listener. Here we're gonna say, okay, we want to create an intent. And an intent will have two parameters. The first one is going to be the source. In this case, the activity that is the context of the activity that is triggering the intent. And the second one is the target, which is the class that you want to open on calling this intent. In this case, is the pet list activity dot class. It has to have the dot class reference at the end because it's looking for a class value, not a pointer to a class, which is what will happen if you do pet list activity. So here you could use get application context. Instead, if you want to, you can use either of them, explicitly saying the context is the context of main activity or the current application context. In this case, they are both the same. After this, you want to say, okay, now start the activity with the information that is on this intent. What is that information? Go from this activity to this activity. Now let's click run again. Our app opens, and now we can enter some information if we want. Right now, this example doesn't have any validation itself. When we click submit, it will come over here. Notice how the those that were created before the activity changed is still visible. That's because it is rendered above the app itself. And here is the list view. If you click back, you go to the login activity, or the main activity in our case. Now, the context of the application when you're dealing with Android is that every activity is independent. So you cannot access information that you have here on this activity from another activity unless you make those values final and public, which is not very secure to do. And if you make them final, it means that you cannot change their values over here in some cases. So instead of doing that, we're gonna use something called extras. So extras is basically a hash map of an intent that contains data that you're transferring using the intent. So to add an extra, you say intent, put extra, then you're gonna have a key. So in this case, it's going to be username, and the value. In this case, is going to be the value of the variable username. Now, the way Java works, this is not going to be a reference, it's going to be a copy of that value. So it's going to be an object with a new reference. So you will not get any null pointer exceptions, as you will probably get in C# or iOS applications if you don't handle the memory copy correctly. So after you do that, just make sure you do it before you start the activity, otherwise you will not have access to it. Now when you go to pet list, then you want to have access to that data. To do so, you come to the onCreate method. First you create an intent as well, and call the method getIntent to obtain the intent that triggered the initialization of this activity for the onCreate method. Then you're gonna get the extra, so this is a type string, so user equals intent dot get extra. So this is a string extra, and we have the key is going to be username. Now in the slides we're using the key as an attribute as a final public attribute of main activity, just to make sure that if we change it, we don't have to go and change it everywhere in the code. When we change this ID, we can just change it in one location. In our case, we're just using it as it is because we're not going to be changing it anytime soon. And now we're just going to make a little change to make use of this data. So let's go to our layout. Let's just put it right next to the label over here. So this is header text. So get list activity. So header text view dot set text, and we're gonna use just a string concatenation to put it right next to it. So we're gonna get the current text. Remember to turn it into a toString because it comes as a character buffer. So just make it into a toString, and then we're just gonna concatenate into it a couple brackets, parentheses, not brackets, and then the value of the user variable. Okay, that's all that we need to do there. And then let's run the app again. Put something on username, something on password, submit. And as you can see, we have the username that we entered over here at the very top. So that's how you create new activities, create intents to move between the activities, and you move data between the activities using the intents. So that's everything for this example. If you want to practice more with these topics, you can simply look at the extras. Here you will find that you can put extra, you can use many different types of values, you can put as many extras as you want, so just play with it, putting more information on the activities and then accessing it from the other activities. You can also work on creating more activities and create a conditional statement that will trigger one or the other depending on some condition. So for instance, you can have that if the password doesn't meet certain criteria, you will trigger an activity error message that shows an error, or if it meets the criteria, you will trigger the pet list activity. So that's everything for you on this one. It's a really short one, so let me know if you have any issues or any questions about this particular topic. Thank you.